Huh. I don't know.
I am operating from from my home because I've got a really bad cold all weekend, still hanging on. I was afraid to bring it into the office, so I don't have my materials, you know, so I'm going to rely on you maybe to help me with those materials. And I know Lindsay helped me last week with.
I'm ahead of you, John. I'll share them in chat again once we're ready to go.
Yeah, I'm not going to, you know, micro go over them like I did last week. I'm going to go over the general idea of those forms, you know. So the form 26 is the new construction form.
I don't know where that is.
26A
We just
is
got- There it is.
is the addendum to that form. So I don't know why I can't get a format that shows everyone's faces on here, dang it. All righty, well, I'll do my best here. So we've got Lindsay and Al and Amy and Ed and Jessica, John, Mike, Morgan, Patricia, and Sabrina, right? Okay, so this is to go over new construction when we're writing new construction purchase and sale contracts. And so in doing this, I wanted to first of all say that Form 26 is really, you know, even though it's an MLS form, the way it is formatted is really, you know, not unlike how a builder's contract is going to look. So it's going to have, you know, a builder's contract is going to have different sections in it. They're going to, you know, match up quite a bit to these sections in the Form 26. But what I really wanted to touch on with you today is that when you're writing up a new construction, the issue there is that the builder themselves have devised their own purchase and sale contract. Who do you think that's going to favor? Yeah. So they're not doing this for the buyer's good. No, they're doing it for their protection. So a lot of the builders' addenda that I see, a particular builder might come up with a very weighted contract for them to protect the builder and really not protect or do much for the buyer. And then I've seen some contracts that I think are really, builder contracts I'm talking about, really fair, really, you know, decent contracts. They're still probably going to be favored to the advantage of the builder. Now, if it's a pre-sale, you want to be aware that in doing a pre-sale that that the builder has gone through experiences in the past where they have maybe had some liability issues, maybe they've had some interference contractual issues. So they're probably going to have some paragraphs there that are going to protect themselves. And so I'm trying to figure out how to do this. It's not working. So you want to, you know, you want to make sure that your at least looking over the builder's contract, right? So, so there's many of them. We can't keep up with and keep track of all the builders as they come and go in the industry, and wherever they're at. But, in general, we want to look at those same clauses that we have in our Form 26 for the pre-sale, and we want to make sure that a lot of those same clauses exist. Now, they're going to, from their bad experience, they're probably going to have a paragraph in there that says that the buyer may not enter the premises at any time during construction. And that's because of experiences the builder has had. They don't want that liability of having the buyer, walking onto the property and getting injured or causing any damage to anything, or getting in a dispute with a worker or a subcontractor and those kind of things. And so that is very likely that if it's a new build pre-sale, hasn't been put up yet, that they're going to have a paragraph like that in there. And that makes sense. To me anyway, that makes sense. I know that your buyer is going to think, well, yeah, you should be able to, at least go look at what it is that I'm doing, right? Having done, because this is something I'm going to be paying for. But the reality of that is that they can do that. They just need permission. You need to just check with the builder and find out when a good time would be to come and look around or whatever. But we got to be careful to keep our buyer, under wraps a little bit, so they're not out of control on this thing, and making sure that they understand that's why the builder is going to have that in there for liability purposes. As far as those other paragraphs go and other clauses go in there, we want to have in there that we want to be aware that that builder could be putting in there that the buyer is to pay for the title insurance. The buyer is going to have to pay for the full escrow fee, and not just half the escrow fee. The buyer is going to have to pay. So they'll try to shift a lot of the fees that are normally split between the buyer and the seller, and they'll try to put them all on the buyer, of course, because they want less expense. They want less expenses. And so there's nothing wrong with, when you look at the contract, builder's contract, there's nothing wrong with calling a representative of theirs there and just making sure that you understand, to be able to explain to your buyer why they're doing something a certain way. And like I say, they're going to weigh that heavily to the advantage of themselves and probably to the detriment of your buyer. So be aware of that. When you go to show, first of all, when you go to show a new construction property, I wanted to start off by this. I'm sorry, I kind of forgot to do this, but when you're going to show new construction property to your buyer, you want to be aware that most of the new construction sites are going to have some sort of a sign-in registration place where they have to identify that they're working with you, that they're your agent. And you might even leave them with a business card, at the site, and you want to attend with them. You don't want them to go alone, because if they go alone, you never know what the builder's rep on site is going to say. Like, well, that's great, you have an agent, but boy, if you were not having an agent, you just came in and talked to me, I'd save you thousands of dollars, they're going to say stuff like that. And you've got to be there with your client and make sure that you are not just protecting your client, but you're protecting your interests for the commission, and I would recommend that you do have obviously a buyer agency agreement signed with your buyer, so that if they do try to circumvent you somehow, you've got this buyer agency agreement you can go back to and require the buyer pay the commission. That's that initial issue is kind of complicated. I wanted to see if anybody has any questions about that. Going out to the site, registering. No questions? Okay. Okay. I can't, Jessica, I can't see anyone's faces except yours right now. So at least I can see your expressions. So I hope you don't mess anything up there, so I can at least see your expressions. But it's hard for me to do a class when I can't see people's faces, and I for some reason I don't have that on my phone here, my handheld computer. So then I hear someone talking. Is that a question? No. Okay, so when we so sometimes they will have just an addendum that goes with our purchase and sale contract. Okay, that used to be more prevalent than it is now. Now the addendum to the purchase and sale contract is really no longer an addendum. It's a purchase and sale contract. It's their purchase and sale contract. So sometimes they will allow that Form 21 to be there, and then they will add their addenda to it, a builder's addendum or whatever that be. But what I wanted to emphasize with this is that whatever is being used, you can't be a lawyer and you can't have your client have an expectation that you're going to play lawyer in this thing. You got to make sure they understand you're not a lawyer, and if they want a lawyer to look at the contract, they'll have to run it by their lawyer at their expense. That you'll be happy to look through it, but they shouldn't be relying on you for any legal direction or advice. You're just going to glance through it with them, and see if there's anything major that jumps out at you that could be a problem. Okay, so they're going to deal with those same basic elements of really our Form 21, but for sure that Form 26, the pre-construction addendum, and you're going to want to look for those paragraphs and maybe match them up a little bit and see if they aren't weighting things a little bit more too much for themselves, the builder. Okay, so one question, I keep hearing someone talking, Lindsay. I don't know whose voice I hear talking. It's a female voice. And I don't know if it's a question or if there's someone doing it.
I think Patricia's at work, and so she has her headset in, but she's also working. So I think you're hearing her work. Oh, sorry. Oh, there you are. I just assumed it was you. I'm sorry.
That was on the Ignite stuff.
Oh, okay.
No, I was on mute.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I don't know what it is, but anyway, doesn't matter. So I'll just go on. So a question you might ask me is, what builder have you seen who has a really good contract? And my answer to that, without being prejudicial about builders, is that Dr. Horton, or as I like to call him, Dr. Horton, has a really good builder's, I think a really good builder's addendum that's pretty fair to both Dr. Horton, the builder, and to the buyer. And then I guess I really shouldn't say the ones that are bad, but there are a couple of really bad ones out there. And that are, when I say bad, I just mean they're really slanted toward that builder and the builder's protection, and they're not going to be doing your buyer any grand favors. So just be aware of that. Okay, so let me ask you a question regarding your commission for selling this new construction. Let's say I'm your buyer. Okay. So I'm your buyer. Isn't your commission really coming out of me? Aren't I having to pay your commission? I mean, in the long run, because aren't they just going to tack that on to the price of the construction of the house? Aren't they just going to tack that on as an extra cost for me by using you?
Yeah, I mean, I guess they could, right? I mean, the price that they're buying, right, is up to include any commissions that they would be paying.
Yeah, yeah. So let's say I'm your buyer and I say, I mean, I've seen their list of costs and they have this cost and that cost and this cost, and then they have a commission in there. So basically they're building in your commission costs. So isn't that just aren't I end up paying for your commission?
That's true.
Yeah.
And having someone on your side that can help you save money by negotiating with the builder is really important as well.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. So like anything else, the builder is giving more exposure to their product by paying a commission and having agents like myself direct you, the buyer, to these things, but also representing you in these things. And so even in strong sellers markets, have I seen builders make large concessions because their agent is fighting for them? Yeah, there's all kinds of things that typically they will include. I should say not include. They will typically not include in the general cost of the construction, but But these add-ons, these extras, can be negotiated, and that's where the agent comes in. This is where you come in, where you can help negotiate for these additional things, maybe the upgraded street lights, maybe the upgraded deck package, things like that. And so these are issues that that really they need an agent's expertise in handling and negotiating on. And that's not to mention just those basic costs I was talking about earlier, which are things like title insurance for the property, right? So who's going to pay the cost of title insurance? Normally, who pays the cost of title insurance? Bueller. Bueller.
Title, that'd be the seller, right?
Yeah, usually the seller pays that cost of title insurance, right? So that's in our Form 21 contract that the seller is going to pay it. So why wouldn't the builder pay it? Well, because they want to get away without paying for as much as they can get away with, right? So of course they'll probably build into their own contract that title insurance is to be paid for by the buyer. And I just think that those are some of the types of things we can look out for them for by comparing our form, like the Form 26 new construction form, or the Form 21 even, and just saying, these are normal seller costs, and half of the escrow, things like that. And so who's going to pay those costs? And so we would be looking at those type of things. Upgrades, again, I mentioned upgrades just a minute ago. And so the upgrades that are going to be going into the property, maybe those could be negotiated. Maybe they won't budge in price. And here's why builders don't usually budge in price. Because if they are building in their own development and they have a development of, let's say, 30 houses, so a small development, and this is one of the first 5 houses, well, whatever this sells for is going to become a comp for all the next sales. And the last thing a builder wants to do is shoot themselves in the foot by having a low purchase price that's going to affect the comps for future sales. So sometimes they will negotiate on upgrades within the packages. But the one thing you don't want to get caught up in is bickering over price, because usually the builder is going to hold tight on the price, because if they've got other houses to sell in that development, they don't want to shoot themselves in the foot by having a lower price to affect the comps for future sales. So they may be willing to negotiate on upgrades, they may be able to negotiate on other things, but probably not the price. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, everyone's nodding their heads.
Good. I couldn't see that. So new construction. So what questions have you had about new construction? Again, let me just summarize. So you always want to make sure you sign in on the registry and attend that viewing with your buyer, protect your buyer and protect your commission. And so their side agents may or may not be trained to have dialogues to talk your buyer out of you and using them. And you've got to, and it's just been prevalent in the past. I've not heard of much recently, but it's been really prevalent in past years. And so you want to be careful about it. And then you want to make sure that the builder's addendum that is good, or the builder's, the builder's contract that is going to be used, that you at least have a chance to look that over and compare it with our Form 21 a little bit, compare it with our Form 26 a little bit, and make sure that the builder's not just taking advantage of them having prepared their own form for their own benefit and our buyer's detriment, right?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Is the registry found on the MLS?
Sometimes new construction will post them up in their listing. Sometimes they will have them there, but usually they're at the site itself. So you come in and you sign in with your buyer.
And some are on websites as well, that you can sign up through there.
Correct. Thank you. Yes. In the interest of builders, that's why they do what they don't want to have is they don't want to have you just showing up trying to claim a commission but not doing anything. And they want to make sure that you're at least bringing the buyer to the property.
Gotcha.
Human beings have a tendency to think the worst, right? And so they will have a tendency sometimes to think the worst and think that you're just kind of clinging on there trying to get money for doing nothing. And they don't know or see all the pre-work you've done with this buyer, let alone what you're going to be doing in the future for this buyer. So you just want to make sure you sign in with them.
Thank you.
I also
Other
just want to share one of my experiences as I've represented on both sides for buyers and builders, and making sure that you're there with your buyer if they're ever talking to the builder is really important. So anything that the builder promises, it's in writing.
Right. Okay, so next I wanted to, and if questions come up, feel free to ask, but I wanted to address the issue of warranties. So typically, there is, for new construction, there is a HOW warranty, HOW warranty, or I think it's called a 710 warranty. And those warranties are for new construction, and they will, warranty that house for, I'm sorry, I said 710, 210 warranty for 2 years on anything structural, and 10 years on a lot of the other stuff, right? So what I've heard agents say is with new construction is they say, well, there's an implied, I've heard this agent say that, well, there's an implied warranty. The state of Washington has an implied warranty for new construction, so you don't even need those. And I just want you to know that's not true. So we do have a Consumer Protection Act, so that if something is drastically wrong, then the buyer can legally, sue, and there's recourse for that, but that's not a warranty. So we want to, as the buyer's agent, we want to make sure that there's a warranty in place. They still do HOW warranties, don't they, HOW? 210, I know I've seen recently. I don't see as many HOW warranties, but anyway, so there needs to be a warranty product out there, and there is no implied anything that is out there to protect your buyer, other than that that there's going to be 1-year warranties on a lot of stuff. There's going to be 1-year warranties on all appliances. The subcontractors are going to give 1-year warranties on their work. The drywaller, the concrete person, the roofer, things like that. They're going to have their 1-year warranties that they give. That is true. as long as the contractor was using licensed subs, to do it. And sometimes, some builders might try to cut costs here and there, and maybe they won't use one. But what is the overall all-encompassing thing to protect our buyers? That there be a full 210 warranty in place for their protection. There is a 1-year warranty under the state of Washington of habitability, that if something drastic goes wrong with the product in that first year, that there's some recourse there through the state of Washington, but that should never be relied on by a buyer. The lawyers for the Northwest MLS have constantly hammered us, if you're doing new construction, make sure that there is a 210 warranty. There's a good warranty in place, signed by the builder, that your buyer has physically in hand in case something goes wrong. I will say that if it is a subdivision and they're building several houses in that subdivision, or it's their own subdivision, they're building them all, whatever it is, they really should worry about neighbors going out and talking to other neighbors who are looking at the other new houses and saying, don't believe them, they're all a bunch of liars, and they didn't do this and they didn't do that. And I tell you, there's a lot of people that feel like they get some sort of justification by going out and doing that. And so a builder, would be best to make sure that every one of those buyers is really happy with the product, right? But they're not going to give away their profits. That's just something they don't do. And they are used to getting nickel-dimed by buyers over a lot of little things. So they are going to hold to their contract. More questions? Okay. So when somebody is thinking about listing for a builder and wants to explore that, so you would want to take the time to build relationships with builders. So, for example, when I had my brokerage in Olympia and Lacey, I found out through just a friend that I was talking to that the builders got together at this one local cafe at 6 o'clock every morning. In fact, it might have been 5 o'clock. I don't even remember now. It's been so many years, but it was really early. I remember that, and I had to get down there so I could meet them all. And I went down there and and had breakfast and just was able to meet all the builders and become familiar with them. And I one thing I can say about my own experiences with builders is that through the years, the ones that I fear the most are what I maybe unfairly call the fly-by-night builder, who's really doing their, has some background in it, and they got their license and now they're doing it. And so it's their first one, and they're, and there's a lot of little things that can go wrong in new construction. And I'm sure you've seen them, with floorboards not being nailed down right. And from that to plumbing and everything else, and drywall. So you want to make sure that you've got, that you're working with a good builder, and they're going to have to go through the process of having inspections done by the county or city along the way to make sure that everything is approved each step of the way. So there's going to be someone from the government entity that's going to come down and inspect each step of that construction until they ultimately give a certificate of occupancy. So that ultimate certificate of occupancy, you should never allow a deal to close without that certificate of occupancy. Should never allow your buyer to sign and close without that certificate of occupancy. And they're going to have to also be aware that with new construction, there can be situations, and this is worked on through with the title company, there can be situations where some work that a subcontractor has done to the property and they didn't get paid. The builder didn't pay them. they could come back and file a lien on that property. There's certain lien periods and lien rights that go on in the state of Washington that you would want to be aware of, and just check with the title company on that and be sure that there's not a window open for something like that to happen.
Hey, John, I had a quick question about when you have like, probably already answered, and I apologize, I was late coming in. I see in the MLS every once in a while where somebody has house plans and they just have a picture of house plans. And they say, you know, they've gotten so far in the building process. I mean, the zoning, or, you know, all the work that goes into it. How, I mean, you still have to tell your buyer that they have to do their due diligence and check on all that.
Yeah, that's a good point, Kelly, because you don't want them unrealistically relying upon you for everything, you know, so that if anything goes wrong, they can blame you. You know, they were expecting you to check that out, right? And you don't want that to happen. So you let them know, yeah, do your due diligence, go down to the county, check those things out, check on permits, check on this. I'll do some too, you know, but I can't do it all. So you got to do your own due diligence. And you as the agent, yes, you should be taking reasonable precautions to make sure that things are being done and being done right. That the periodic inspection processes are being handled appropriately. And these are records kept at the county, and you can see them and check on them. But as far as yeah, and they would have had, you know, they would have had plans submitted, things like that. Sometimes, just like with the new construction we talked about last week, we want to make sure that any subdividing that needs to be done, you know, is appropriately finalized and done also. But there's a lot of stuff that can, you know, happen with new construction. So we don't want to just go blindly, you know, flailing away, and we want to have some direction, which is why I wanted to do this class and make sure that you at least have some general guidance in the right direction to go to. We have a couple of agents who do, you know, some new construction. So the one that pops in my head is Ginny Anderson. So Ginny Anderson, that's G-I-N-I, Ginny Anderson, in the Federal Way office, carries on listing new construction, you know, for builders she's worked with for years. And so she's a good one to talk to when you're, you know, looking at new construction. Carla Clark down in the Kent office also works with builders sometimes, and you want to, you know, sometimes pick their brains a little bit on things and any questions that come up, and they're really knowledgeable about new construction, how they as a listing agent would handle things.
So when you talk about it, to kind of add a little bit more to Kelly's there. So for instance, I do a lot of vacant land, right? So, and we might have a seller who's got his property all, you know, ready to go to start build on. And then we get a builder to kind of, are there different forms or things that we can do to, so like when you see those listings and it's got the picture, you know, the sketch of the house or something, but we've already got the builder in place, the financing in place. We just need a buyer to come along and you know, move it forward.
Someone who's going to buy the land so that the rest of the package can go in there.
Yeah. So, but the way I understand it is you get the financing in place, you get the builder in place. So when a buyer comes in, they're buying the completed product, right? The seller of the land gets paid off and moves on. Now they own the property, and now they just start to build their home.
Right. Yeah. So you know, that becomes complicated because of, you know, someone's got to be entitled to the land, and usually it's going to have to be the one who's going to have it encumbered, you know, with the loan for the construction of the property. And so it doesn't really, sometimes I see builders who list, and I've seen builders over the years list a house for sale where they haven't even owned the property. You know, they have to have the permission, they have to have the permission of the landowner to be able to advertise it as such. And maybe they have a contract. I've seen a contract even between them, so that they have that arrangement made so that once the thing is purchased and closed, then the landowner gets their land payout from that, for the builder, I should say, from the builder. And then the builder is going to be paid off through the construction loan and take their portion. But yeah, those are complicated, and maybe Carla would be a good one to talk to about that.
I couldn't quite remember where we find if the private road has been turned into a public road. Because I know that that can be a big deal down the road. If
No pun
there's
intended, right?
no one checks.
I was joking. I was saying, you said down the road, and I was saying no pun intended.
Yeah, no pun, really no pun intended.
So yeah, so that's a very good point. Also, is that many roads are starting out as private roads, and they can't just be given to the county. They have to be, or the city. They have to be signed over. You know, they have to accept that road and that kind of thing. So there can be intent to do so, but the representation of the builder should never be that it's going to be that it is a public road, or is going to be, because maybe the public entity won't accept it. So again, that's something that, you know, you can do, you're looking into with the county planning department or building department, and see what stage that's at. But that's a very good point, is that, no, if it's going to remain a private road, there's going to have to be, depending on how many houses are along it, there's going to have to be some sort of a joint road maintenance agreement in place, right? And then hopefully that can be turned over and accepted by the county or city.
Just makes me think of the HOA changes with builders and how they own the HOA very frequently to start with.
Right. So you're right. They will start out with the HOA, and then when there's a certain percentage of homeowners in there, then it's turned over to them. Right.
I don't know if this is a question or something that was brought up, but I see these plots that have RV only or 90-day camp. Okay. Some people have been talking and looking into putting tiny homes on those because they're considered an RV. How messy is that?
Very, very messy. Yeah. So so be aware that there could be private covenants written into the deed restrictions is, I guess, what they're called. So there could be deed restrictions written into the deed of a certain property. And just like clearing title for any sale, you know, you want to make sure that there's not something there that's going to prevent, you know, that was meant to prevent the single family home type that they are building. Maybe it's a square footage requirement. That's a deed restriction, that no home less than 2,500 square feet can ever be built on this property. And so they want to put in 1,000 square foot mobile or manufacturer. Well, you know, there can be covenants preventing certain things, or there could be covenants requiring certain things, and you just want to be aware of those in the title search to make sure there's nothing that looks really unusual on there, because that can happen. And as far as what you're talking about specifically, Kelly, I'm not aware of those. I haven't seen those, but you know, it just would be a good due diligence thing on your part as the agent to, check title and check on those things and make sure that we're going to meet regulations, and you would want to talk to the county about it.
Yeah, we we were looking at different properties to park the RV on only for a while, and CCNRs can keep you from doing that. And then HOAs, of course. But then they have a time period. You also have some problems out at the ocean with different HOAs. So that's where I've dealt with it, is research is, and then there's a few that, they're really below normal build. It's about 120,000 that you can get a buildable lot pretty much a lot of times. And if they're below that, there's probably some encumbrances that you don't know, an easement or a river, or some CCNR that you don't know about, or extremely high HOA. But that's what I've been kind of looking at.
Mhm. Mhm. So most builders, when they're looking at projects where they're going to do both some development of it and construct houses on it, yeah, they're going to they're going to list their houses probably with whoever brings them the land. Most builders that I've known, that's been their modus operandi, is they always say, hey, bring me the land, I'll list all the houses with you. So if you are able to find some good developable land that doesn't maybe have those issues Kelly was just talking about, but is, good developable land, that they would be able to invest some time and money into, and you bring them that, although we can't have tie-in arrangements, because that's an antitrust law violation. Most builders are pretty good with their word. You bring in the land, they'll list the houses with you as they develop and build them, and maybe even coordinate with you, discuss, the marketability of certain type of houses, size of houses, and things like that, and the way they develop the roads and things like that. And so, getting in on the ground floor with the builder is another really good way of getting those new construction listings. Okay, any other questions? Well, I hope that I get better.
John, you put yourself on mute.
Whatever I have, cold or whatever it is, I didn't want to bring it into the office today, so I didn't have my resources available for me, but I hope that this discussion and overall overview of new construction has been helpful for you. And if you have questions further on, when you think about them, feel free to email me, text me, call me.
Well, thank you. I hope you feel better.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Bye-bye.
Thank you, John.
Thanks, John.
Are you there, Lindsay? No.